Welcome to the Affirm Wellness Podcast, where we will explore the many facets of wellness. In each session, we'll dive into inspiring stories, give expert tips, and practical advice to help you live a healthier, more fulfilling life. In this episode, we explored the true meaning of self-love and why it is the foundation of healing, confidence, and lasting inner peace. Self-love is more than self-care or treating yourself. It's the way you speak to yourself, care for yourself, and recognize your worth. We'll discuss common barriers to self-love, how to cultivate a healthier relationship with yourself, and practical steps you can take to begin your healing journey. Remember, peace doesn't begin when your circumstances change. It begins within. So, Bubami, let's take a moment to check in with ourselves before we get started today. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling okay. I do appreciate the check-ins because it's a way for us just to see where we at and what's going on with us. And so for me today, I would say I'm feeling overwhelmed a little bit because it's, summer break. School is about to start soon, so I'm excited about that. And just trying to navigate, balancing all the hats that I wear. So that's what I would say. I feel overwhelmed, but at the same time, I'm taking it one day at a time, doing the best that I can, and that's all I have
Yeah, that's
control over.
that's it. That's all you can do.
Yes.
We say that a lot.
Yeah.
Just, doing the best we can, taking it one day at a time because it is a lot to consume.
Definitely.
It's a lot going on.
Yeah, and I think between both of you, you and I, um, we have a lot that we do, a lot of hats that we wear, and I think we make it look easy, but it's not easy.
Yeah, it's
And
not.
so, yeah, that's what I would say. Overwhelmed, but at the same time, just taking it one day at a time. What about you? How you feeling today?
I'm feeling I'm feeling happy that we are just rocking and rolling with our podcast, and we have some amazing topics, coming up, and we've gotten some really good feedback about our podcast topics, and people are connecting with it and things like that, and that's the impact that we want to make. So I'm feeling really happy about that. On the other side, I'm feeling curious because I have some things coming up with my son. He's graduating in class of 2027. Oh my
I
goodness.
know him since he was like 8, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just curious. We've got some college visits lined up, and he's also been interviewing for some part-time jobs and things, which is in alignment with him coming out of school soon. So I'm just curious about how all of this is going to turn out. I know you're excited, nervous, all the things. So something else that comes to mind when you kind of think about, all of the things that are going on. How are you showing up for yourself? I know how you show up for other people because we talk about it all the time. Our clients, our kids, our spouses, but how are you showing up for yourself with all of this stuff going on?
Just pacing myself and just loving on myself. I give myself a lot of grace.
Mm-hmm.
What I can change and control, I focus on that. What I can't change and control, I lay it at the altar. That's what I always say.
I love it.
Lord, you know what's going on. Take care of it, and I just let it go. I don't even think about it anymore, to be honest with you. But I do, pay attention to how my body feels.
Yes.
And so I think for me, it's not necessarily about the situation going on around me. It's really how my body feels because I'm very keen on how am I feeling. Am I feeling exhausted? Am I feeling irritable? And I think a few weeks ago we were speaking, and I was really irritable at you. Like, you're okay? And I'm like, yes, I'm irritable, and I can highlight and I can identify. Hey, I'm irritable today. Just be mindful that I'm irritable, so don't take anything personal. I try not to be, difficult or disrespectful to anyone when I'm irritable or if I'm having a hard time. However, that's because I'm very mindful of
Yes.
yes. And so I try to navigate that, my own emotions and process through things on my own, or have you or, people that I care about to talk about some of those things,
Yeah.
like my sister or, close friends. And so that's what I would say. What about you? How have you been showing up for yourself?
I think I've been showing up for myself pretty well. Definitely, I'm big on rest. I have to get my rest. If I'm not getting my rest, I just don't feel productive. I have a cloudy brain, and I just can't think clearly or be as productive as I like to be. So I do like to definitely get my rest. I've been giving myself that grace. And then also, this is a season of, I was telling you this the other day, of no pressure, just more grace. If it gets done, it gets done. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Of course, I'm prioritizing the things that need to be prioritized, but just coming from a place of, Deshauna, you're doing the best that you can. And outside of that, you're not going to put any more pressure on yourself.
Yeah. And I love that, and I think that's something that you have to work towards getting to,
Sure.
and I think that's what has been sustaining us with all the hats that we wear, is being able to not only teach our clients these things, but also practicing it ourselves. I always tell my clients, "I practice what I preach." So that's why I can hold you accountable because I'm practicing it
Absolutely.
too. So I know that it's not easy. I know that it's, sometimes it's challenging, but here are some tools that you can use. So as therapists, we can give out tools, but we also need to be able to use them ourselves. And I think
Absolutely.
that's the mistake a lot of people, sometimes make. People put us on a pedestal at times, like,
Mhm.
your life is perfect, everything's going right for you, and you would know all the answers. We don't know all the answers,
Mhm.
but we know how to use our tools.
Absolutely,
And so
absolutely.
I think that's where it comes to when it comes to that. And so I'm so excited about our topic today.
Me
I'm always excited
too.
about our topics.
Yeah.
And I love this topic because I have a book called Peace Begins Within,
Mhm.
The Healing Power of Self Love. It is a guided journal. And in that journal, what we talk about is the idea of what self love looks like
Mhm.
versus what self-centeredness looks like. And so there's a saying always that says self-love is not selfish. And a lot of people have a difficult time with that. And so I did a lot of research on because I feel like it's important to be selfish. I think we're
Mhm.
selfish by
Mhm.
nature as
Mhm.
humans, not intentionally all the time.
Mhm.
Like, for example, you're going to protect your children or your, household. That could be looked at as selfish in the sense of like, I'm going to prioritize my.
It is a sense of selfishness.
Yeah, I'm gonna prioritize my stuff, but the difference between selfishness and self-centeredness is a big difference, and so
Mhm.
self-centeredness doesn't consider anybody else.
Sure.
You only consider yourself, and even sometimes you don't even consider yourself with self-centeredness. It's ego thing. It's this dark thing when it comes to self-centeredness, and so I break down the difference between self-love, being selfish, being compassionate, and also your that self-centeredness, and so I think it's important to kinda be mindful of that, and so I always tell this story about my idea of self-love and why I
Sure.
wrote that book was, I remember at 16 years old sitting at church, and the pastor was talking about being there for others. It's
Mhm.
at my childhood church, they have this sign that says "others" at the top,
Mhm.
and his message is about how we should be there for others. And he talked about the Bible verse, "Love your neighbor as you love yourself," right, and treat others the way you want to be treated, and things like that. And so I was thinking to myself, if we loved our neighbors like we loved ourselves, why are people so mean to other people? Because in my mind, growing up, I just assumed that everybody loved themselves.
Sure.
It could be, because of the way I grew up and things like that, and we'll talk about that some more, but, like, that was my mindset that everybody automatically so if you were born, you just loved yourself. And so the revelation that God gave me at that young age was that people aren't loving other people because they're not loving themselves. And so that's one thing that I've really highlighted
Mm.
in my counseling sessions with clients and talking to individuals is really understanding that it all starts from within.
Yes.
That peace begins within. If you want peace of mind, if you want a healthy mindset, it starts from within. You have to do that work internally.
Yes.
Because a lot of times it's easy to project on other people.
Mhm.
Oh, it's this person's fault. This person's doing this and this person doing that. And I know that when people have conversations with me and clients have conversations with me and I put it back on them, I know they hate it because it's easy for us to be like, yeah, they did this and they did that. But to look back internally is really hard for a lot of people because your intentions are always good, but are your boundaries set? Or are certain things in place? And so that's why I'm excited about this topic. What is your idea about self-love, and where did your ideas about self-love come from?
So this terminology was never thrown around in my household when I was growing up. It was never called self-love.
Mhm.
Um, my love and respect for myself came from the fact that I was loved by my mom, I was loved by my dad. We had a lot of love in our household growing up, even through, the discipline and,
Mhm.
redirecting and things like that. It was still a lot of love. And my mom always made sure, my dad always made sure that they said, I love you. My mom would give me a card, for everything. I still have cards at home And she would always end it with, I love you. And so I felt good about myself. I always had a good sense of self, but it didn't always come from a place of give yourself grace. I didn't learn that grace until later
Yeah.
because in the beginning, like childhood and as a teenager and even in my earlier adult years, um, sometimes I it was more pressure
Mhm.
and to succeed and do well at things because I was the oldest. I'm the oldest girl. I always got good grades, always had good behavior reports in school. So it was always a lot of pressure on myself to keep that up. And if you're not doing that, you're not doing a good job, that kind of thing. And so today, I know self love as me accepting myself, us accepting ourselves as we are through the flaws and everything. Having compassion, even if we do make a mistake. Don't beat yourself up. It's not a failure, it's just a mistake. And guess what? As long as God gives you another chance tomorrow, you can do it all over again. Do it better tomorrow.
Yes.
So,
That's good. That's good. I do agree with you. Our upbringing and the way that we see the world definitely impacts our self love. We talked about family. Being Nigerian, American. I was born here, but I grew up a little bit in Nigeria, and I have a unique name, Bubemi.
yeah.
You know, and so you can imagine how it was growing up with a different name and, coming from a different cultural background. It was challenging to fit in. And irony of it is I still had a sense of self. And I think because I had a sense of self and I loved myself enough,
Yes.
I was able to connect with people and have friendships and things
Mhm.
like that. Cause I was thinking to myself, if I had cowered down and, belittled myself, it would have been hard for me to connect with people because I would have blamed everybody else for that,
Absolutely.
including me versus I took ownership of my name. I used to, I do that now. I'm like, my name is Bubayman. It means answered prayer, and I'm an answered prayer everywhere I go. So
Yeah,
that was
I
my
love to
slogan.
hear you say that.
Yeah, that was my
Yeah.
slogan. Growing up, and guess what? People started doing. Her name is Bubay. They started repeating the same thing that I was saying.
Yeah.
Her name is answered prayer because I was confident about it, and because I love myself enough to appreciate that my name means something. It carries weight. I was able to, influence other people because the way took care of myself, because of the way I loved myself, people
Yes.
also showed up in that type of way
Mhm.
as well. And
Mhm.
even if they didn't, it didn't hit hard.
Mhm.
Even if they made fun of my name or made these little sayings about, oh, you from Africa, you're this and that, it didn't hurt me because I had a sense of self. I knew who I was. And so eventually they would, realize like, oh, that's not working. And, they would, be kinder or just not bother me at
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
because of my own self love.
Yeah. Yeah. Good deal.
Mm.
Good deal. When we talk about, self-love and all of the pressures that we have on ourselves with, being a mom and, being a wife and friends and working and all these different things. We say a lot that we're looking at progress. We should look at progress and not perfection. Mistakes are going to happen. I said earlier we shouldn't look at those mistakes as failures. What are some things that you keep in mind for yourself, and maybe even some things that you tell clients about how we talk to ourselves when we do make mistakes?
Yeah. One of the tools that I often tell people or clients in general is something that I told myself is that we all are humans. We're all trying to figure it out.
Yes. Hmm.
Right.
Hmm.
And you have to look at yourself and look at the good, the bad, and ugly. We all have good, bad, and ugly.
Hmm.
We all do. I try to operate in my good because my bad and ugly is not cute. So I stay in my good. And so recognizing that I have good, bad, and ugly, everybody else does. And that, we all are humans trying to figure it out. And what I do is if I don't like something about myself, I find a way to just accept it. Like this is how it is. This is how, if I can change it, like, for example, if I don't like my weight, I can eat healthier, I can exercise. Those are things I have control over.
Yes.
But there are certain things I can't change about myself, so um accepting it and recognizing that that's experience that everybody has. If you're human, you're gonna experience that. So I'm not the all ball out. I'm just another human trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so I think normalizing that, we all are trying to figure it out helps with understanding that everyone has their own journey, everyone has their own challenges. I posted the other day, I was like, be kind because you don't know what people are going through. Just be kind in general. And so that's one of the things I feel like when you have that self-love, it's easier to be kind because you're giving yourself that grace. And grace, what grace looks like, a lot of times people ask, what is grace? How do you show grace to yourself? And the way you show grace to yourself is recognizing that I'm just human.
Yeah.
Just trying to figure it out. And I'm doing the best that I can to figure out how to live this life. And we don't necessarily have a manual that says, you do this like this and do that like this. And even if we did, I know I have the Bible that I look at, but even if we have like a manual say this is how to live life, people will still not follow it.
You still have to kind of deviate
Exactly.
and and also be flexible with what works for your lifestyle.
Exactly. Exactly.
We wrote
Real
out.
lots.
Thank you. We can both have a manual. Yeah, we're reading the same thing, but we're going to interpret it differently.
Differently.
And
Exactly.
then there are different circumstances that's going to come up in our lives that's going to cause us to kind of deviate from what the manual says. And that's okay.
Exactly. And I think that's why the foundation of self love is important. That's why I preach that so much. And I think, people are oftentimes shy away from it because it can be uncomfortable to talk about self love. Because I could tell you, Lashana, I've had, I would say, 90% of my clients that I asked if they love themselves, they said no.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, it was surprising because, like I said, I always had the assumption that you loved yourself. And these people are successful, so it's not like they're not successful or they're struggling. These are professionals. They're creative. They're successful in their own right. They're business owners. And for me to hear somebody say they don't love themselves, it's interesting, But when you dig a little bit deeper, you see why. Because, like you said, you didn't necessarily, you know, understand or talk the word self-love wasn't necessarily the word that was spoken in your household, but you were loved.
Sure.
Your mom and dad said, "I love you." Your mom wrote cards for you. But there are some people that don't get that, and it's not that because their parents don't love them, because you can't give what you don't have.
Yeah.
And so maybe some parents weren't able to show up the way that they needed to show up for their children.
There you go.
And sometimes we can carry that on
Mhm.
along with ourselves.
So it's funny that you mentioned that because, with the clients that I serve, they say the complete opposite. They say they do love themselves, but what they say and what they're doing is just doesn't really line up. And so what we really have to process is how do you can say that you love somebody, or you can say that you love yourself, but how do you show it?
Yes.
Let's talk about how you show up for yourself every day. How do you talk to yourself when you do make a mistake? When something goes on in your life and you feel like maybe it was your fault, you're the blame, how do you kind of bounce back from that,
Yeah.
right? Because anytime we make mistake and we want to do something well, it does hurt. But how do you kind of coach yourself and support yourself through that?
Mhm.
And so that is what a lot of people struggle with, the action of self-love. So I can say that I love myself and I respect myself, but when you're hungry, do you eat? When you are tired, do you sleep?
Yeah.
Do you set boundaries with people? Do you let people run all over you? Do you give yourself a break from all the pressures of the everyday life, not necessarily with just a vacation, but giving yourself a massage or shutting things down for a day or what have you. That is a lot of times what we have to teach and normalize because we are so good with doing it for other people, but we're not always we don't always do so well with doing it for ourselves.
Yes.
So sometimes we give away so much to other people. We're so depleted and we're not important because we're functioning,
Yeah.
right? We're functioning. I get up, I go to work every day, I do what I need to do for the household. So I don't need to do all that stuff that I'm doing for other people, but you surely do.
And sometimes people take that as a trophy.
Well,
That I'm helping everybody. That I'm there for everybody.
yeah.
It's not cute if you're not there for yourself because guess what? That brews resentment.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so there's a lot of resentful people because they're giving, 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 and they forgot about themselves. And so that's why peace begins within is important because in order for you to fully truly give the way that you need to give,
Sure.
you have to love yourself first. You know why I'm giving at 100%? Because I love myself. People are giving, but you're not giving at 100%. I've always challenged people. I say, you're not giving at 100%. They be like, what do you mean? I've done this. I don't know. Because if you really truly love yourself and you filled yourself back up, guess what you'll be giving? You'll be giving 100%. And I have to break it down to them. You'll feel more rested. So you'll be less irritable.
Yes.
You will be less snappy at people and things like that. And so if you are full, if you're rested, think about how we show up when we go out and things like that. We're present. We are loving. We're kind. Doesn't mean that we don't have things going on behind the scenes. But like you said, I got to get my rest.
Yeah.
And I gotta, for me, I gotta drink my water and I gotta eat and,
Mm.
and make sure that I'm, taken care of. And so just kind of thinking about, things like that. I was laughing when you were talking just now because I have twin girls and they'll be like, it's okay, mommy. We all make mistakes. If we just try again, because these are the affirmations I've instilled in them. So you see them kind of as children, you can see how that can show up as adults. Like if you have never been taught that mistakes happen and mistakes are part of living life and learning, then you'll be very hard on yourself. And as a Nigerian American, perfectionism was something that I struggled with. And that can impact your self love as well. Like it's never enough.
Yes.
And so I, gave up on that when I was 25 years old. I denounced perfectionism.
That's good.
So I'm in recovery. I always say I'm in recovery because
When I first met you.
I always say I'm in recovery because when you're in recovery, you always intentionally don't work towards not falling back into those patterns of behavior. Because if I say I'm cured, something might trigger something where I'm in that mindset. I believe in being cured and stuff like that, but I don't want it to come out the front part of my mind
Yeah.
that perfectionism can be something that can be a stronghold to you.
Sure.
And perfectionism also impacts a lot of people's self love.
Yeah. But those are those beliefs. Like if you kind of look at an iceberg, right? You can see from afar, you can see the tip of the iceberg, and that's your behavior. But underneath the iceberg, right at the bottom of that iceberg, are your beliefs.
Yes.
And your beliefs fuel what you think,
Yes.
and how you feel, and your behavior, your ultimate behavior.
Yes.
So at the top of that iceberg with your behavior, you're not treating yourself well. You're not advocating for yourself when people talk to you or do certain things to you because you don't have that love. The beliefs that you have about yourself is that maybe you're not worthy of love.
Yes.
Or, everybody else is worthy of love, but not me. I should do for other people. That's my self-worth, right? But really it does start within with you loving yourself, you telling yourself that you love yourself and that you're following through with action. And what are those actions? Showing up for yourself like you show up for everybody else. Your friends, your family, even your children. Sometimes I ask my clients, well, with that self-compassion piece, if your child, God forbid, got a boo-boo on his or her knee, what would you tell the child? Are you okay? Can I help? Is it something that I can do? You have to do the same thing for yourself.
Yeah. And if you're not doing that, if you'll be like, get your
Yeah. Oh,
get your butt up.
there you go. There's sometimes it's that way too, right? And if we're talking to other people like that, we're probably talking to ourselves like that too. That's not love.
Exactly.
That's not love.
Exactly. And that's why I brought that up because there are people that are very harsh with you and harsh with other people because you're harsh with yourself. You can't tell me you're kind to yourself and harsh to other people. It doesn't balance out like you were saying earlier. It doesn't match up. The behavior doesn't match up with the emotion. Like it doesn't match up. And so how do we align with that? How do we get to a place where we're in alignment with that?
We have to target our beliefs. We have to really, for one, dig and understand where did we learn about our self-worth? Where did we learn? What messages were we told when we were growing up? What messages were we told when we started to form relationships in our childhood and teenage years and early adulthood? What messages, what themes kind of came out of some of the relationships and experiences that we had? How do we learn? Did we learn how to value or devalue ourselves, right? With those kind of experiences. And then also, we also have to ask ourselves what kind of boundaries can we set to help protect our peace and our well-being. If we're not setting boundaries, and that doesn't mean putting up walls, but if we're not setting boundaries, meaning teaching other people how to treat us, then how can we say that we love ourselves?
Yes. That's a good point. And it's interesting that you say that because I had a friend that she was complaining to me about, people betraying her and things like that. And I stopped her and I said, did they betray you or did you not have healthy boundaries?
Yes.
And she sat down for a minute and I was like, I hear what you're saying. People behave badly. I agree with that. However, the only reason they could behave badly was because you didn't put up those parameters for them not to cross. And so if I'm open, like I always give the example of like with boundaries, there's porous boundaries. With porous boundaries, we are open. So your fence is open, right? Everybody can walk in. There's no ticket. There's free access. Everybody can just come in. And then there are rigid boundaries. Rigid boundaries is like think about a metal gate. Like nobody can come in And that's not healthy either. Porous boundaries aren't healthy. Rigid boundaries aren't healthy. For families and stuff like that, you might have porous boundaries. And for strangers, you might have rigid boundaries. But what we want to have a balance of is called healthy boundaries. And so healthy boundaries identifies, okay, I can be open with my family, so I can have a little bit of porous boundaries here, but I still need to be rigid in some ways. And then with strangers, I can be open, but I need to be mindful of, if you don't control that, people are going to take advantage of you. Because remember, I said earlier, we're selfish by nature, not intentionally. I think it's a natural thing to be selfish. If there's something that you could give me, if there's a need that you could meet for me, sure, I'm going to take that. I'm gonna receive that because of the person that I am. Because I love myself, I'm mindful of you because I'm like, I don't want anybody to treat me like that. So I'm not gonna cross that boundary. Can you see that?
Yeah.
That I'm not gonna cross I create those boundaries for you, even if you don't have them for yourself, because I love myself but everybody's not in that space. So if they're not in that space, they can't create boundaries for you because it's not in our nature to do that. Because it's not in our nature to do that, you have to be intentional about doing it. When I create boundaries for other people, it's intentional. It's not because I'm just magically, you know, a person that is not selfish, because we all are selfish in nature. I'm not self-centered, but I can say, "Oh, Deshauna can provide this for me. Let me get it." But I could abuse it if Deshauna doesn't have boundaries, right? And so when I see people that don't have boundaries, I don't abuse their stuff because I love myself and I don't want anybody to treat anybody badly. I want to love others. I want to love myself and love others like I love myself.
Yes.
Right. And so, um, in summarizing all of that, I want to give some tips and some tools on how to actually practice self-love and how to I mean, we gave some great examples, but I feel like we can, go a little bit, deeper into some of those things that we could do practically
Absolutely.
to show to demonstrate self-love.
Absolutely.
One of the things we talk about is speaking to yourself kindly. Anytime you talk to yourself internally or outwardly, because sometimes we think about just internal dialogue when we talk about talking to ourselves, but sometimes if I speak, like when Deshaun and I introduce ourselves, we say affirmations, we say positive things. Just look at my beautiful, friend, my business partner, this amazing, creative. Like, what words are you saying about yourself, right? Not say, "Oh, I'm so this, I'm so that." If you're gonna tell yourself the truth, also say it in a compassionate way. Stop comparing your journey to someone else. Social media, yeah, has, created this thing where people have access to, compare themselves even more than ever before. And so making sure that you're not comparing yourself to anybody, because comparison is a thief of joy. And so if you want joy in your life and you want to be at peace and have peace within, you cannot compare yourself to anybody. Compare yourself to yourself. And how can I be better than I was yesterday? That's the only person you compare yourself to. Set healthy boundaries. We gave examples of how to set healthy boundaries and why boundaries are important, because you want to protect. I think Deshaun talked about protecting your time, your energy, and just learning how to say no and understand that no is a complete sentence. N-O period. And when we're saying no, is not because we're trying to be hurtful to other people. Because I remember talking to somebody before and they were like, "Oh, well, I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to I don't want to hurt their feelings and things like that." And I was like, "You got that much power to hurt people's feelings?" Yeah, I didn't know you have that power to hurt people's feelings. You don't control how people respond or how they react. You only control how you respond is how you react. So just be mindful of that. And then celebrate small wins. Making sure that you are able to celebrate your small wins in the process of working towards your vision for yourself. Every little thing that you do matters to the bigger goal. And so I bought a ticket, to this trip where I saved $2 towards my, savings goal is a small win. So you celebrate all those wins. And then lastly, practice self-compassion. How are you talking to yourself? How are you treating yourself? How are you emotionally feeling? How are you giving yourself grace? That self-compassion. Self-compassion is very important when it comes to self-love and having that peace within. The way that your brain is challenging those cognitive distortions, because we all have cognitive distortions on unhealthy thoughts that come in from wherever, from maybe watching social media, wherever those thoughts come in from your childhood, they're gonna come in. And so how you challenge them immediately is by being compassionate with yourself. So once you have compassionate self-talk, compassionate emotions, that you're able to challenge those thoughts better.
Those are some excellent tips.
Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Excellent.
What would you add to that, Deshauna?
Number one, for prioritizing your well being, I talked about that a little bit earlier. Asking yourself, checking in with yourself, what is it that I need? Do I need to eat, sleep? Do I need to have connection with another human outside of my household because maybe I've been with my kids, I've been with my significant other, whoever. Maybe I need to get outside of nature, but just making sure that you are taking care of yourself, nourishing yourself, prioritizing your own well being.
Yes.
Delta says something that I can never get out of my head: put on your own mask before you put on somebody else's mask. And so we just need to keep that in mind, especially for us helpers. We want to help everybody, but we need to make sure that we are prioritizing ourselves. Give ourselves permission to ask for help. If I had a cape, I would take it out and put it on now, right? Because us strong people, also need support. We need support. We need people to talk to, people to spend time with, people to laugh with, people to sometimes help us um take a load off our plate when we're too overwhelmed with the load of work or handling our households and things like that. So give yourself permission to say it is okay for me to reach out to someone and ask for help. Also, challenging negative talk. Negative self talk keeps us away from focusing on our goals, keeps us stuck, tells us that, sometimes things are not worth it or we're not capable of doing things. And we need to challenge that, replace it with more productive self talk, like I can do something, I will do something, or this is how I can get it done. Just overcoming some of the barriers that we come up with sometimes in our minds, or why we can't do things. Also making time for yourself without guilt. Ugh, okay. Especially as parents. Oh my God, if I go do something for myself, I should bring my kids, or I should consider this person and that person. And not to say that you can't consider everybody else sometimes, but you really need to make time to have time for yourself, so that you can think, you can rest, you can reflect. And if there's a lot of noise and clutter and things like that, you can't do that. And that helps you show up better for others,
Yeah.
when you are making time for yourself. And lastly, just remembering your worth. That's what self love is all about.
Yeah.
Remember that you are worthy of love. You are worthy of respect and kindness on all things good. No matter what's going on in your life, you're worthy. Your value isn't determined by how productive you are, achievements, or other people's opinions. You're worthy simply because you are you.
Yeah.
You are who you are, Deshauna, and you're Gubami. That's what makes us worthy. That's what makes us worthy.
Yes. And so if you have not already purchased the Peace to Give Within workbook, it is available on Amazon. There is a self-love workshop that we're going to continue to do throughout the year. So if you catch that, sign up for the self-love workshop. We talk more in depth about self-love and how to actually put those tools into action.
The takeaway for today's session is that self love is not selfish, it's essential. The relationship that you have with yourself influences every relationship, decision, and experience in your life. When you choose self compassion over self criticism, honor your needs, and recognize your worth, you create the foundation for healing and lasting peace. Remember that you don't have to earn your worth, you simply just have to recognize it.
The wellness challenge for this session is to intentionally practice one act of self-love every day. Choose one or more of the following. Speak one positive affirmation over yourself each morning. 2, write down 3 things you appreciate about yourself. Option 3, say no, because no is a complete sentence, to something that drains your energy. Option 4, spend 15 minutes doing something that brings you joy. Option 5, replace one negative thought with a compassionate one. Option 6, look in the mirror and remind yourself, I am worthy just as I am. And at the end of the week, reflect on this question. How did intentionally choosing myself change the way I felt about myself? Thank you so much for joining us on the Affirm Wellness podcast. And remember, your inner critic may have a voice, but it doesn't have to be the final word. Choose grace over criticism, compassion over perfection, and give yourself permission to grow. Please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, protect your peace and prioritize your wellness. Take care.
Thank you for joining us. Remember, wellness is not a destination, but a process, and every step you take matters. Until next time, stay grounded, stay connected, and keep prioritizing your well being.